Welcome back again. This is episode number 48 of the danjohnuniversity.com podcast. We have a question from Jameson. That's a good name. I'm looking for some guidance on how to structure my strongman training for 3 consecutive days. Now, there's a reason he does this, so let's get his reason. I have a new work schedule that allots me 3 consecutive days off weekly, and I'm looking for guidance on how to appropriately structure my training so as not to venture into overtraining but continue to make progress. That's actually quite good. I do have a strongman program called the Weekend Warrior, where you do the two big sessions, Saturday and Sunday, and then you opt for a single exercise on something like Wednesday, a power snatch, a power clean, maybe front squats, some big global movement that kind of gives you a little excitement in the middle of the week. I think we need to break this into 2 parts. So, Jameson, let's first look at those 4 days you're working. Now, during those 4 days you're working, if you can do any kind of that, for example, whether if you do something like foam rolling, okay, which is good or bad or whatever, those are the 4 days I want you to do the foam rolling. Those are the 4 days I want you to do any and all mobility work, okay? If you have some flexibility issues that are impacting your competition, your strongman work, let's deal with those on those days. On those 4 days, those are the days I'd like you to focus on maybe getting the extra sleep. Those are the 4 days I want you to up your protein, up your veggies, up your drinking water. All those basics. Those 4 days where you're not training become those days where you take care of all kinds of recovery issues. Okay, now on those 3, I don't know all the events in strongman competition, but there's a couple ways we can do this. We can go whole part, but we need to have you make sure we get your weightlifting in, which I think you should do the Olympic lifts and the power lifts. You're going to do some kind of rehab work for the shoulders, the elbows, the knees. That's what I've seen with strongman training. So we're going to have to get you to Olympic lift. We're going to have to get you to power lift. We're going to have to get you some of that rehab work. And we have 3 days to do it. If we get you too sore on day 1, you might not do a very good job on day 3. So let's talk about day 3 first. Personally, I think you'd want to have day 3 as your finisher day. That's the day where you need the entire next 4 days to recover from. So this is the day I would, if you do have the yoke carry, the farmer walk stuff, the one where you carry it like this and you go around in circles. I'm sorry, I don't know the names. Those are the days you want to do those long, heavy, deadly endurance things. So day 3, I'm going to go backwards here if you notice. So day 3 is the day where you do all the exhaustive work. And I would suggest you to leave it out there. If you're doing something like farmer walks, burn holes in the sidewalk going back and forth. Yoke carries, you're going to go long, you're going to go far. Get the work capacity day is day 3. I would suggest, though, that day 1, okay, hang on, I'll get through them all. Day 1 would be the day, originally I was thinking, when I first read this earlier, I was thinking day 1 would be the day to do the Olympic lifts. But now I'm thinking differently. I think maybe day 1 should be the day you get your powerlifting in. Now, I don't know if you're deadlifting, squatting, and bench pressing. I know that a lot of your events are deadlift-ish. But the nice thing about the power lifts is you're not going to need a ton of warm-ups, flexibility work, motor patterning work when you go into it. So take day 1 to be your powerlifting day, and then on top of it, those events that you would consider the short, explosive ones in your sport. The stones, maybe, the Atlas stones. I know you have so many small events, but anything that would be kind of in the world of powerlifting. Day 3 is all your finishers. Day 1 is powerlifting and the big, explosive, short-term strongman events. Day 2 then is going to be your hybrid bridge day. I'd love to see you do the Olympic lifts that day. But also, it might not be a terrible idea, especially if you have the equipment, to run through maybe 1 to 2 attempts with every single thing in your Strongman system. So I hate to say half and half, but day 3 is half the work, which is all but emphasizing the work capacity on the long endurance. Day 1 is your kind of power day. And then day 2 is the Olympic lifts as best you can mix with all the events. Yes, so in some of the events, you'll do them 2 days in a row. Maybe the Atlas stones, maybe this stone, maybe that. Those quick explosive ones, day 1, day 2. But on day 2, if there's it'd be easier for me to explain it with the Highland Games because there's 7 to 9 events. But on day 2, you would do all 9 Highland Game events. Not necessarily like a total Highland Games, but maybe 3 to 5 attempts with every throw or something like that. And just kind of bustle through it. It's a technique I use to prepare myself for weight pentathlons. The weight pentathlon is 5 events. And a lot of my competitors told me that they would break it out over a week. And I always thought, but that's not how a weight pentathlon feels. You're throwing the javelin after throwing the discus and hammer, and you got to kind of change gears a little bit mentally. So when you do get to day 3, and that's the work capacity, long endurance day, I want you to kind of leave it out there a little bit on the field, okay? And then that'll give you the 4 days to recover. If you can, in those 4 days, if you could pick one day just to do something like power clean or power snatch, anything that lights your nervous system back up, I would recommend that. But Jameson, I want you to write this down, what I'm talking about. Come in with your own ideas, share it with me, and we'll discuss more in the future. Thank you. Tim writes us, I'm 42 years old and weigh 332 pounds. I started taking my health seriously in early April after the coronavirus rapidly through my state, which is New Jersey. Oh, okay. I'm down 23 pounds so far. Well, Tim, congratulations. Good. I've been involved in powerlifting but suffered 2 herniated discs early in 2019. I stopped training and gained a bunch of weight, which often happens. With the gyms all shut down, I broke out my 2 old trusty 16K kettlebells and recently acquired 2 28 kettlebells. My goal is to lose as much fat as possible and move better since I have a 2-year-old. I'm just not sure where to focus on and how to program with them. Any advice or direction would be great. Well, first off, Tim, I'm begging you to go get a full physical. I'm begging you to get a full physical, including a heart stress test. At your body weight, we got to make sure that your doctors are walking with you on this. Now, here's the thing. Maybe they're going to give you some medications. I don't know. But trying now to have just diet and exercise help you, though I think it can make it can help, obviously. I just believe that we need you to get to a doctor. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do, Tim, is I want you to go see a dentist. Now, what I'm going to recommend you do is eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of foods that are good for your biome. But if you have any kind of crown issues or cavities or maybe just some weird little thing, I'd like you to get that looked at. And I'm also going to recommend to you, Tim, and I have a very good eye doctor, is I'd like to also see an eye doctor. It is well worth your time to get your eyes looked at your age. And the combination of eye doctor, dentist, and medical doctor might really push you in the right direction for a number of the health-related issues we need to discuss long term. Of course, as you know, fat loss happens in the kitchen. Fat loss happens in the kitchen. So I really want you to start embracing the idea that you have to eat like an adult. I want you to have vegetables at every meal. I would like you to eat between 8 and 14 different kinds of vegetables every day. My wife and I have gotten very good about it. We toss in vegetables into everything. Last night we had a taco salad that probably had, and I'm not exaggerating, 18 different vegetables, including flowers, as the nice lady at the farmer market gave us some edible flowers. So there you go. When it comes to programming right now, what I would suggest to you, first off, I'm very concerned about the herniated disc, but let's move into what we have here first. I would like you to think more about mobility for the first couple of weeks. So if you can do goblet squats, I'm a big fan of the goblet squat. The other one I'd like you to work on is the half kneeling press. So what's going to happen is in the half kneeling position, that's like if my left knee is not down the ground, I'm on my right foot, the half kneeling, and left knee down, I press with my left hand, right knee down, I press with my right hand. A nice little thing for you to do is left knee down presses, goblet squats, right knee down presses, and get yourself doing a few circuits of that. One of the things I hope you'll realize just as I'm saying this is I want you to get up and down off the ground a lot. From there, Tim, we can certainly move into some other things. Now, one of the things I just want to make sure you're cleared to do some of this next thing called the hinges. I would strongly suggest to you an exercise I call the Bulgarian goat bag swing. I want you to Google my name, Bulgarian goat bag swing, and I have videos on my YouTube account explaining how to do that. Also, if you're at the account, you might as well go to that whole family of things called hinge. And I'd like you to start looking at which hinges you can do appropriately. And then finally, if this is the basic workout I want you to do for the first week or so, which is the half kneeling press, goblet squat, half kneeling press, do that a few rounds. You're strong enough to get some decent reps in there with both the 16s and the 28s. But then I want you to start thinking about suitcase carries and farmer walks. Suitcase carry is a single hand farmer walk. I want you to start working on that a little bit. It'll help knit up this area right here. We call it the core or the column, depending what day of the week it is. But we're going to stop there for your advice because I want you to make sure you go to the doctor, the dentist, the eye doctor. I want you to start doing those basic simple things that the half kneeling presses, goblet squat, suitcase carry. And then I want you to strongly start looking at your nutritional side. For a homework assignment, I would like you to read Spring Chicken by John Gifford. His site's no longer up, but you can find it on Amazon. Spring Chicken. There's some sections in that book about fat loss and things like using ice immersion and things like that for longevity. I want you to start reading that, and then in a couple weeks after you respond to me, we'll start to make a better programming for you. Your program right now is to get on the phone and start making those appointments. Go to the grocery store, start buying those veggies, and take care of business. And I'm going to be here the whole way with you, okay, brother? All right, bye-bye. Nathan asks a question I'm a little unsure of, but I'll do my best. How important is the ability to add incremental weight to the effectiveness of easy strength? Not at all. If I'm understanding what you're saying, the best success I've ever had with easy strength is when I didn't have any 10s and 5s. I had 45s, 35s, and 25s. And so when I went up and load, you'll notice my early numbers were 165 because that was my 35-pound plates and my 25-pound plates in the bar. Then I jumped to 185, which was 45s and 25s, then 205, then 255, because that's with the natural numbers. I think part of the reason I was so successful with easy strength versus what I read online with people who don't do well with it is I didn't have big options. So when I went from 205 I guess I could have gone to 225, but I didn't. My next jump was 255. So for 255 to be appropriate for 2 sets of 5, you better have mastered that 205 fairly well. So I don't think there is a need for that, but that's me. Of course, I've had a lot of success with it, and I did write the book, so you might want to listen to that. Thank you. Luke writes us, after I finished revisiting Aristotle's Ethics, I noticed similar things between your park bench, bus bench framework, and Aristotle's discussion of restraint, endurance, and habit. Knowing that you are a professor of religious studies and often cite literature to express an idea, I became curious. Huh, it's kind of a fun question. 1. How have your academic and literary pursuits impacted your approach to strength training? It, uh, it does, yeah. For one thing, I always use this word called steno symbol. You know, when you tell somebody you're lifting weights, almost always they do that, right? Well, that's the steno symbol of weightlifting. If you weightlift, you are a bodybuilder. Well, that's not true. I'm an Olympic lifter. No, you're a bodybuilder. In religious studies, we call that a steno symbol. That's a symbol or word that is so ingrained inside your head that no matter what else I tell you, you still come up to the same thing being a steno symbol. So when I train people in the weight room, one of the things I try to break is their steno symbols. Squats hurt your knees. Deadlifts hurt your back. Weightlifting makes you muscle down. None are true. Good coaching will take care of all that. But that's a steno symbol that hits. My academic and literary pursuits in the area of strength training, it is interesting because I'm having a hard time discerning, because in my head, they're not on, I don't have a column over here called strength and conditioning and a column over here called religious studies. They blend. I guess one of the things you would probably pick up with my approach to strength and health is that almost universally, I can go back to the 1940s, 1910. I have this ability to reach back. Religion means to link back. And I think my strength and conditioning vision, I link back. I link you back to Dick Notmeyer. I link you back to Ralph Maum, Bob Lahadi, Coach DeYoung. Stuff written during World War II, stuff written after World War I, stuff written in 1910. Because I constantly try to link back to let people know that really there's nothing new under the sun. And honestly, it has been done better by many people. So I like that first question. It'd be kind of fun, Luke, in the future, every time you hear that, I don't know, highlight it somehow and then ping me, and then we can have a nice little discussion later on this. Question 2. How has strength training informed your academic and literary pursuits? I like that because one of the things that I fell in love with the barbell was it's progressive. And if you show up and you just keep trying and doing a little better, you might not be the world champion, but you're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. In my academic pursuits, I use the same approach. I imagine in my entire time in college, outside of maybe track meets and maybe my junior year, I got the flu pretty bad, but I don't think I ever skipped a class. I always went to class, always. And I felt that if I just went to class, did the readings as appropriate, stayed ahead of my classes, that was a very big thing to me, that my GPA would reflect that. Well, I was a 4.0 scholar for most of my career. And really all I did was show up and, do what was asked of me and try to be early, which is, of course, what you try to be as a weightlifter or discus thrower. You get there on time, you're prepared, you do your warm-ups, the whole thing. So it is interesting, and that's the thing I'm pulling out of it, is that the lessons I learned in athletics and in weightlifting helped me immensely in academics. When people ask me how I write so much, I just tell them, well, I get up in the morning and I write. And then they ask for some secret. It's like, well, what's the secret? Well, the secret is 3 sets of 3. You just do it. And magically, a few months later, you're stronger. Luke, I really appreciate this question. I would like you to keep an eye on when I do those little literary references and just kind of give me a little nudge every so often, reminding me. Thank you, Luke. Manjeet asks a question. How do you manage the process of writing a book? I find it extremely difficult and frustrating, and I'm interested given your previous discussion on habits and experience with publishing a number of bestsellers. Do you have a process you follow, for example, setting a goal, creating themes, writing for X amount every day? Manjeet, for me, and I went over this in another video on workshopping, but there are a few times in my career where I set out to write a book That have been 40 years with a whistle, intervention, can you go, and now what? Those were clearly, I'm setting out to write a book. I also think those are my 4 best works. But obviously the readership doesn't agree with that. So the biggest issue, Manjeet, is you first got to do, it's the writing itself. And what I like to do best, I'll just pull one up, is, I just start off, this is a travel folder, but I start off with these big manila envelopes, okay? And what I do is I just write up, and this, by the way, workshop is the same process I use. I just write up on this thing some ideas. And if I find an article or anything that supports it, I'll pop it in here. So these ideas, okay, I want to talk about easy strength. Oh, okay, all right, easy strength. I want to talk about, if I'm going to talk about easy strength, how is it going to help impact people? Oh, I use my quadrants to let people know how I impact people. Quadrants. Well, all of a sudden, the second I said quadrants, I'd pick up another one of these folders and write just quadrant on the top, knowing that that is going to be, a series of chapters. And I just keep, and that's how I start with Sharpie and these manila envelopes and just dropping in ideas, either physically dropping in or writing them on the manila envelope. Once I get probably, by the way, that whole process might take 5 minutes, maybe not even that long. Well, the next thing I do then, and this works for me, is I bring out a PowerPoint, I open up a PowerPoint presentation, and I write on it a title. And the title might not be any good at all because it's going to change. And then what I start to do is I start putting in these ideas. And here's the thing I like about PowerPoint, is that I can add a picture to PowerPoints. Now, maybe it's a picture of me lifting weights at Dick Knopmeyer's gym. But then when I look at that picture a couple of weeks later, I'll be like, oh, I got to tell the story about why I picked this picture. And then there'll be a story in the background, and my brother Phil might be sitting there. There's Joy, there's Josh, there's Danny, there's Eric. And every one of those guys, Josh, Danny, Eric. And I'll start thinking, oh, I got to talk about that. The moment I start typing that, I got to talk about that, now I'm beginning to fill in the book. Manjeet, the number one problem I see with most people when they write books is they try to start off like Charles Dickens in The Tale of Two Cities, It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. Nobody starts off a book with that brilliance, or in Genesis, in the beginning. Yeah? That's a great line. Nobody starts off that well. So what I usually do is when I have this idea that this is going to be the book, okay? So I have 15 of these manila folders. I have a few ideas of pictures and little notes from here. What I do is I find something right in the middle that's easy to type up. Maybe it's a couple stories about Eric Subert and me training. I type those up. Now I'm up to 7 pages because there's a lot of stories about me and Eric training. And all of a sudden, and then I see that, the part here, I got to let people know where this is coming from. It's principle number 7, and the importance of a training partner. The importance of a training partner. I better let people know what, maybe I need a chapter on it. What is a bad training partner? Wow. By the way, I just thought of that, and it's not bad at all. I kind of like where this is going. So that's how I start. First, the manila envelopes, the manila folders with the Sharpie, with some general ideas. What are my habits? The first habit that's very important for me, maybe not you, Manjeet, is before I go to bed at night, I write a 1 or 2 word to-do list. Sometimes it's podcast at 8, pick up dog, podcast at 8, so I don't have to think about it. I set the coffee and I wake up to the smell of coffee. Generally, I get up about 5 in the morning. I like to answer emails before I get going because emails are practice for me as a writer. And then I'll just pull out a folder and I'll look at something and go, and if it inspires me, I'll start writing. I'll write sometimes about 2, maybe 3 hours. I don't eat until I work out, so I train at 9:30 every day. And then after that, I eat my first meal of the day. I don't necessarily write in the afternoon, but sometimes I will sit down because during the workout or when I went shopping or when I was folding clothes, a clarifying concept came in my head. and I might just go in and write. Now, here's what happens. When I go in and add that little extra paragraph, because there's 50 paragraphs, and then I type in an extra one. But then I look above and I'll realize that I said they. Well, what did I mean by they there? And then I'll realize that that's not a good sentence, and I'll retype that sentence. And then I'll realize that I need another paragraph because it's a little vague. And in the afternoon sometimes, I wouldn't want to call that proofreading or editing. To me, it's more like that is the process of the growth of the book. Okay? And what happens is I probably dive in to every chapter, I don't want to give you a number, but let's say a dozen times. Let's throw it out there a dozen times. So every chapter isn't necessarily rewritten. It's not rewritten. It's rediscovered and redialogued. And to me, that is the process of fleshing out a book into something great. When you do write books, you need to have stories in there. People love stories and stories about people. You need to have some clarity as you write. And I always tell people, I've always been told you write to your audience. And here's a weird thing. It's going to come off cocky, but just go this. The audience is me. My audience is me. I'm writing to little Danny John 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I'm trying to help him with the hurdles he's dealing with, okay? Now, I don't ever say that in a book, and ideally, when you read my Workman Jeet, would be like, no, he's writing to me. Because in a sense, my thought is, if I'm writing to my younger self, I'm also writing to everybody else too. I hope that helps. If you need more follow-up, ping me a note. Gasper asks a question. 1, what are the pros and cons of doing full body, squat, press, pull, hinge, carry, structured workouts versus a split style? Well, that's why you'll notice in my training I do both. Okay, so I'm cheating your answer. I apologize. Of course, I don't like either or. But one of the things Mike Warren Brown and I have tried to do over the years is have a specific day being the focal point of a movement. Traditionally, right now, for example, hinges are Tuesday. We call it buns and guns. I love that name. Wednesdays is press. Fridays, don't go into them, it's the loaded carries. But even though today's a loaded carry day, Friday's a loaded carry day, we're still going to do pushes in part of the warm-up. We're going to do a set or two of goblet squats. We're going to, we might do a hang versus pull-ups for the pull. I like that best, so that every day you do all 5 plus everything else you need to do, movements every day. But focus, if you're only training 3 days a week, you might, if you're going to have this upper body day, this push-pull day, I would still have you squat in the warm-up, swing in the warm-up, do Turkish get-up or a get-back-up in the warm-up, and maybe light suitcase carries at the finish of that because your grip might be a little fried. If Wednesday's your squat hinge day, that could be a tough day. I would still ask you to, do some push-ups in the warm-up or hangs, for the pull, plus maybe a farmer walk at the end. And if Friday's your farmer walk, we would mix in hinges with sprints, squats with sled pulls, and things like that to get to get everything going. That's the way I would do it. 2, what is the ideal distance to walk for farmer walks or carries? There's no answer to that. There is none. The only thing I would recommend, you always work in loops so the weight doesn't get too far. If you carry 600 kilos, for 2.5 kilometers, which would be pretty tough, you got to bring it back. So we always work in loops or figure eights, It just depends. There was a thing when I first got on the internet where you were supposed to carry, it's called the Inman mile, maybe. It was like 300 pounds or body weight or double body weight on your back for a mile. Well, if you can do that, don't worry about anything else. You got it covered. Ryan asks a question. My question is about training after waking in the morning. Most days, the only time I have to train is about 30 minutes before breakfast. My issues concerning training while fasted and the typical problems with having just woken up, such as being stiff and still groggy. Do you have any suggestions for making this early morning training more productive? This question's come up a lot lately. Well, the first thing is I would say have your equipment, I mean, to the point of having your shoes out, your socks in your shoes, whatever shorts and stuff you got out right there. Slide out of bed, drink that glass of water, knock down that cup of coffee, and get going. I would say with the situation I'm reading here, your issues seem more about the preparation than the actual doing it. The fact that you get up and work out 30 minutes before breakfast, that's pretty good. If you're using the workout generator on the site and you have it at 30 minutes, 5, 6, 7 days a week, you'll do whole body workouts, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. I've been there though. It is tough. One thing I would suggest, and I first learned this during the Velocity Diet experiment of 2007 or 2008, is roll out of bed. I would take my morning supplements and a glass of water, and I had my shoes on, and I was out the door walking my dog. I would say within, if I had to pee, but let's just say a minute and a half from waking up to out the door. You might find that if you can get up 15 minutes earlier and add doesn't have 15 minutes, and all you're going to add is a 5 to 10 minute walk. Nothing crazy. In 10 minutes, I can do, easy. At the pace I do, I can do 3 loops around my block. Would get you, that's about 6/10 of a mile, 3/5 of a mile. But I tell you one thing, if I then walk into my gym, I'm ready to do something. My breath is terrible. I look horrible, but I'm ready to go. I would also encourage you to maybe hold on to that fast just a little bit longer, if you can. Push that breakfast off just a little longer and see if you can find ways to incorporate a later breakfast, early lunch. Let's call it a brunch, if you will. And maybe that'll give you more time also. Thank you, Ryan. This is an email from Josh. I am the head football coach at Wofford College. When we get our players back on July 23rd, it will be the first time we have worked with them since March 14th. Do you have any thoughts on program design? First off, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, when Josh sent that picture and this question in, the very first thing I did was I picked up the phone and we talked for a long time. I don't want to go into too many specifics about how I answered the question because now we're sliding into a bit more of a professional thing. But I will say this. I have a small side theory that this might be one of the best years ever for college football because they haven't burned all the athletes up in the off season with these insane strength and conditioning programs, where they just, like the one school, the coach puts out barrels that the athletes can puke in them during the workout. I played football a long time and I never puked during a game, and I don't understand why puking somehow makes you a better wide receiver. I don't get it. We talked about incorporating, this is something I can share with you, incorporating the strength and conditioning into the American football practice so that there would be conditioning drills that were linked in so that you couldn't, if you're at practice, maybe you have, maybe you have people doing double kettlebell presses over there. The wide receivers are doing that, and then the very next drill, they're catching passes from the quarterback. The linemen, this is a great, bring the sleds back out. Hitting the sled is the strength and conditioning that linemen would need. Bear crawls, have a bear crawl station, have a bear hug station with the heavy tackling dummies. What I try to get him was the old 1960s concept of mixed training from Peter Sheen, the great German coach, where it's hard to tell where the technical practice, the strategic and tactical practice ends and the strength and the conditioning begins because they're completely interlinked. Josh, I'll talk to you again real soon. We have a question from Reese. Are there any exercises that you can recommend that will help with tight hip flexors from the hip muscles, including the psoas muscles, etc.? Currently, I'm doing flexibility stretches, but I believe that I could benefit from strength exercises. So if you're asking a strength exercise, yeah, there's one, and it's a staple of every training program I have. It's called the half kneeling press. Now, if you're trying to get the flexibility in the hip flexors, so I'm going to put my left knee on the ground, my right foot is ahead of me. If you don't understand it, Google my name, go to my YouTube account. We got videos up there on how to do this. But the half kneeling press is an absolute game changer when it comes to getting the pelvic bowl to remain under the rib cage. And by having the pelvic bowl under the rib cage, if you push down in this case, remember having your left knee is down, so my right foot is on the ground. I'm going to actively push that big toe into the ground as hard as I can. I'm going to squeeze my left butt cheek as tight as I can, and I'm going to. So this is Tarzan. We call this Tarzan belly, and I want your ab wall engaged like you're doing Tarzan belly. That will help with hip flexor flexibility. The late Stefan Fernholm, he taught me this thing where basically he would stick his knee into stairs and wedge his left knee in there and then do all these exaggerated stretches to improve his speed. And it seemed to work for him. So there's just some basic ideas. Follow-up question. Also a side question. I'm considering doing the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge soon. Could this be done with a water-filled metal jerry can? The current kettlebell is a little too light, ? Well, sure. In fact, you could, with the can, you could do Bulgarian gold bag swings. Again, Google my name, go to my YouTube account. Yeah, sure, that'd be great. Make sure you take a video of this. I'd like to see it. Thank you. Kyle has a question for us. Love the video of Anne. We all do. Question. When I compare her lifts to my own, it's like comparing an F1 race car to my 2001 Cummins diesel truck. We both have power, but Anne has flow and speed that I've always wanted. My swings and kettlebell snatches are sharp, but my various grinds are always slower and grindier looking. How to cultivate my inner F1 race car in squats, presses, hinges. I'm a 38-year-old woman with some wear and tear, but feel like it's not too late. Well, it's not too late. And the idea, I'm just going to say, there is no exercise I'm going to give you. But what you're talking about is so important. You know, one of the things I emphasize, and it's a big part of my book, Intervention, is that we are on the journey towards mastery and grace. And the fact that you picked up on this really helps. So, you know, I was an undersized discus thrower, but one of my decisions was I wanted to have the most beautiful technique in the world. And it's weird because when I would go to track meets, I was also often filmed by the coaches from other schools or institutions because my technique was so beautiful. And folks, if you have those films, send them in. I'd love to see them. Focusing on mastery and grace, trying to be beautiful as you move is something, Kyle, that I really think works well. Here's the thing. The moment you wrote what you wrote here, you began the process to moving more elegantly, more beautifully, more gracefully. And honestly, that's about all I can say about it. The conscious decision to look better, to be smoother. When you look in the mirror while you're lifting, you're not just checking out your pipes or your armacondas. Anne's nickname is Anne Armaconda. You're going to be looking for, does that look flowish? Do I look good? How am I carrying my head? How quiet is my head? Am I lifting like this or am I lifting still? Is my head tall or is my forehead up? Those kinds of things, and that can really make a difference. I want you to get back to me on this and see if this helps. Thank you. We got an email from Amara. When I was younger and 80 pounds heavier, I powerlifted, but that was over a decade ago. A friend of mine was an Olympic lifter in college. We both decided that we wanted to have a friendly competition in the spirit of getting back what we had when we were in our early 20s, before life got in the way. The race is first to a 315-pound conventional deadlift for 3 reps. I'm a 6'3" female. Okay. And he is a 5'7" male, but he has asthma. Good. I find that interesting. So I can see how your brain is scheming to win this. We are both weighing in at about 170 pounds. My current best triple is 230 and his is 190. Do you have any advice for either of us to best the other? And especially, do you have any tips from me? I want to win. Yeah, get out there and start doing your loaded carries. I don't want to see you doing farmer walks. I want to see you doing farmer walks with a trap bar. I want to see you do suitcase carries at the one-handed. I want you to build up your ability to hold on to weights as much as you can, okay? Farmer walks, loaded carries build up work capacity. I don't even think you need a deadlift to prepare for this, but what I would suggest doing is make sure you're on a system of never failing in your deadlifts. The best advice I can give you, I don't know how long you have, but I would strongly think about something like what Marty Gallagher does. So Marty Gallagher takes a 12-week program, a 12-week period, and every single week the load goes up. So in your case, week 12 would be 315. And then he reasonably works back those numbers so that in the first few weeks you do sets of 8. Week 1 should be very easy because you're going to go up in weight next week. Week 2, up in weight. Week 3, up the weight. Week 4, up the weight. In week 5, here's the thing. You're going to drop to 5 reps, but you're going to still up the weight. Week 6, 5 reps. And of course, when you get to week 9, I'd like you to drop the 3s or doubles. And so it's very simple. I mean, you're going to start, I can't do the math for you off the top of my head, but you might be able to start with, say, 170, your body weight, for 8. Next week, you're going to try 180. Third week, 190. Fourth week, 200 for 8s. And then just build that up. Start with the end in mind and work backwards. I would strongly also suggest to you either pull-ups or hangs just for the grip strength and keep those shoulders in good shape. But I think it's very doable. So a couple days a week, lots of loaded carries, 1 day a week or 2, the deadlift with that pyramid by Marty. Good luck to you. Let's find out who wins this. We have a question from John. I am a 58-year-old male and about 200 pounds. I read in your Easy Strength book that you think a person should be able to bench your body weight as many times as you can do a body weight chin or pull. That is, up to 15. That is a recommendation I used to have a lot. But before I go on to your question, John, just remember this. Most of the people I worked with in the 2000s could bench body weight for 30 and 40 reps and only do 2 pull-ups. So one of the things I was trying to do in that first decade, 2000 to 2010, is get people to get balanced again. I would work with people who could bench press body weight for 15, but they couldn't squat it for 5. So we needed to work on the balance, and that's why I was so definitive back there on those numbers. You know what? Probably still true. In my particular case, I can do about 12 reps of pulls, but I can barely do 1 body weight bench. Can you give me your insight? Is this a true imbalance and what I should do about it? Well, here's the imbalance you might have. When I'm over in Europe, and I work with my students there, Europeans can all do pull-ups all day long, and they can't bench to get out of their own way. And then when you come back here to the States, Americans can bench all day and can't do a single pull-up. So one of your first issues, if you just think, hey, I'm a European, if you're not. The fact that you can do 12 pull-ups at a body weight of 200 as a 58-year-old male that's a good thing. And I would keep on that if I were you. You know, there's the old joke in our field about how do you know this North American has a shoulder injury? Well, because they're North American. Every American, the USA, 50 states, who's male is going to have shoulder issues because all of our sports are throwing sports. So, you know, when you're doing those pull-ups, that's going to help with your shoulder issues. You're going to have to ask how important that bench press is to you. Personally, if I were you at your age, I would start looking more at a military press or the overhead press and make that your goal, because that not only is very impressive, but it's also going to be really good for your shoulder health and the way you look, because doing the overhead press is going to really fill out that shoulder, the shoulders, and make your triceps look real good. Let me know how it goes, John. Jason emails us. I've recently discovered sled work and do it at the end of my workouts. What I do is load it up with half my body weight, push it from the end of my driveway to the street corner, which is approximately 25 meters, and then walk backward pulling it. Oh, that's pretty good. I do this 4 to 5 times, and I really enjoy the challenge. But I was wondering if you have any ideas for additional work that I can do with the sled other than what I'm currently doing. Well, yeah, you're backwards pulling it. Toss in some just good old-fashioned sled pulls, the runs, the sled dog pull or whatever. Yeah, there's another one you can do, and that's the side shuffle. So you're gonna put it on this way, and you walk, side step left, flip around, side step right. We do that on our hill work a lot. But no, I like what you're doing here. I think you're doing great, and I'm hoping our other listeners listen to you, because you're going about 50 meters, and you're doing this 4 to 5 times. That's a really reasonable, repeatable workout, and I hope you inspire some of our other listeners to, listen to you. Thanks so much, Jason, and good luck. Well, thank you for listening. Now listen, if you have questions, I will do my best to answer each and every one of them. Please send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Thank you so much for listening.